for the 4th week of July 2020. This week, the party get the fighters out of the trenches and the mages out of their ivory towers as we engage in some class warfare. The Adventuring Party, discussing tabletop and radio gaming the Irish way.
Welcome to the party. I'm Savage.
And in accordance with a recent Supreme Court order, I'm Conrad.
And I'm Colin.
I am Barbarian King Scarr once again, relieved of my duties in order to talk nonsense about RPGs.
And I'm on.
Okay, so we've a mix of internet personalities and real people.
I was never a real person.
But we are back, folks, for another episode of Wed, Bed, Behead. Actually, I might do that with some reverb. Hold on. Wed, Bed, Behead. I've blown out all the levels on Audacity. Okay, so. Well, I'm having fun. I don't care about the rest of you. We're back for another round of Wed, Bed, Behead, and this time we're doing what we very sort of loosely... We're looking at classes, or player archetypes. And we've got a mix of D&D stuff. We've got some more generic stuff. We're branching off into some other places. But we're looking at the party and guests this evening are going to look at the classes or archetypes that they love, like, you know, not that much, but like well enough that they'll dally every so often, and absolutely never want to see again. Not invited to their birthday party. So to kick us off, we're going to go in the order we managed to write them down in our group chat. So we're going to hand over to Eoin, and Eoin, you're going to take us through your Wed, Bed, Behead. But I warn you, folks, there may be interjections, especially, and I mean especially, when one of the other party members may have chosen the same choice in the same category, Wed, Bed, or Behead, or has counter-chosen. So, you know, bit of a bun fight. But hang in with us for the next half hour and let's see where this goes. Eoin, over to you.
Alrighty. First off, my wed is the Jedi. And the Jedi also extends to any of the sort of mystic warrior, to an extent a bit like the monk. It's the character who's got kind of a strong, often spiritual basis to his abilities, but it's also mechanically the character who can fight often at an 8 or a 9, but when they really need to, you can turn it up to an 11. And that's often the position I find myself in an RPG anyway, and I really enjoyed the playstyle of being able to rev the character up to a higher gear if need be, to basically have a turbo mode, which I can use every so often when I need to get a bit more punch out of the character. I always liked that as a concept. Philosophically, I kind of like the Jedi from it's kind of the spiritual warrior monk knight templar thing going on, which is a cool playstyle. It's a bit of a different playstyle, a different approach to the world. So I've often been a fond of that. For my bed, something I'm very fond of and I would take it around for a while, but I wouldn't really commit to long term. It is the Gish, but in particular the 3.5 era Dustblade class, which is a ton of fun as a class to play. It is mostly Shocking Grasp character. You cast Shocking Grasp and you deliver it through your sword by hitting someone with your sword. But it was great fun. It had a ton of cool little tricks in it. It had a lot of quick cast, true strikes, and a bunch of other shenanigans that just were a lot of fun to use and play. It was like a fighter, but it had a bunch of tricks to make it better in combat. Just a lot of joy in that.
Yeah. The Gish archetype is one of the strongest things to come out of the 3.5 theory crafting thing. The idea of, I want to play a fighter, but because it's 3.5, I need spells, so I'm going to have to figure out some combo here.
And for those of us in the cheap seats, what, pray tell, is a Gish? Why is it called a Gish?
It's called, the term itself, I think, was coined for Dungeon Magazine 100 as a Githyanki strike trooper who has both levels in wizard and in fighter specifically, and then the forums just sort of took this. They'd been dallying around with the term for a time. They used to be called Eldritch Knight, but Gish was so much more flavorful and easier to type out when you're in a heated argument over kobolds turning into God. that people latched onto that term instead. So it's basically just a fighter wizard.
Is it fair to say that there's quite a few similarities between the girl you're taking home and the girl you're simply taking as far as the nearest motel?
There always will be. There always will be to a certain extent in these things. But the Dustblade is a more limited idea, really. It's just I'm a fighter that uses magic, and it's just a good iteration of that. Mechanically, there's a lot of similarities, but the Jedi has a deeper kind of spiritual aspect to it, and a philosophical aspect where you're a kind of a warrior who's trying to advance, a higher cause, but not like personified in any one thing, but more kind of a generic, it's an interesting philosophical toast, whereas the Dustblade is just sheer cool mechanics.
So that takes us naturally to whoever's on the chopping block, your behead.
Yeah, so my behead is the 3.5 edition fighter for being the most miserable class to play. That it's just dreadful. It got given 1 million feats, but none of the feats are any good. It's just this. It plays so poorly in the game. It got all the uniqueness, the unique advantages that fighters used to have in older D&D all got peeled away from it, and it just become fight good. There were people with class features that were better than the fighter, literally. Like, I'm a druid. I can turn into a bear. That's better than a fighter. I also have this bear animal companion. He's better than a fighter. I don't know what to tell you.
I don't know. All that huge swathe of feats that they got gave them a lot of options, and you could combo them. I encountered at one point, or GM'd at one point, one that was built with the trip attack into opportunity attack specialism, and he was, as a GM, he was a total pain in the arse.
Yeah, the trip fighter was a jerk, but like it was mostly late game stuff when they eventually figured, like, there was years of people suffering through this terrible class to be like, oh, I want to play the fighter, I'll fight good, and it was the worst class to give a new player. When in theory, like, the fighter's role could be, this is the best class to give a new player because it relies on the least system knowledge. To get anything out of the fighter, you actually needed to know quite a lot about what you were doing. And it was just it was a painful class because it just didn't get access to all this magic. And, like, you think, oh, feats are really powerful. Yeah, natural spells, amazing if you're a druid. Like, fighters get what? Combat expertise? Oh, these chains stuff. I have to buy combat expertise. I have to buy lightning reflexes. I have to buy all this stuff to make me get access to the good feats. I have to take so many vegetables before I start getting anywhere near my dessert. It's a dreadful class to play. There have been far better iterations of the fighter since then. I think it's the most miserable experience playing a fighter. Like, you're much better off being... The best thing to do to be a fighter, you take 1 level in Barbarian to start. Because at least then you have Pounce. It's dreadful, miserable class to play. Miserable class to play. And a huge grip on people's imaginations. Because everyone's like, fighter should fight good. I play fighter. But don't do that. It's not what you think. It's not what you think at all.
Well, don't bottle it up, Owen. You gotta let that out.
3.5 Fighter had some very good artwork.
It did.
It sure looked like a class.
Wasn't most of the artwork for 2.5 that one fighter continually being eaten by various monsters because they hated him? For
2 iconic fighters in 3.5. There was the dwarf and the human. And the human was put in because the suit said you need a human male fighter in there, or the game's not going to sell. And so they kept sticking the fighter in things and killing him off in the art, because he was literally a suit decision to shove into the show.
I distinctly recall him turning into an aboleth slave at one point, and of course on the cover of the Draconomicon you can see a red dragon just sitting on top of his armor like a crow.
Okay, gets no love at this end of the world. Okay, well, that's I suspect we might hear some pushback on that one further down the line, but we're gonna go to you, Scarr. It's time for you to reveal your choices in Wed, Bed, Behead.
I may have made claims of being a great king of barbarians, but actually, in my heart of hearts, I am wedded to the monk.
The monk?
And this is not actually the same thing as Owen at all. It's not because of the mysticism. It's not.
I hate to break it to you, but they can't actually marry.
Okay. Get back. The
skirting around that
like I could say it's
ecumenical
about
matter.
the whole spiritual enlightenment, and it is about the forging your soul into something stronger. And no, it's about being a kung fu, flipping out and jumping 57 feet in the air and breaking mountains with my kicks. And I don't know, I just have this real fondness for just unarmed combat, and almost any RPG, if I can figure out some way to make a silly kung fu build, I will try. It will probably horrifically backfire and be absolutely useless, but I'm going to try. And I think that's the thing, is just like, I'm always going to look for this. I'm always going to see, is this an option in this game? And that's a sign of commitment. Like, I'm committed to the monk. And to say otherwise is simply lying to myself. As for dalliances, I've had thoughts about various types of spellcaster, but there's one that always just keeps coming back. It's always a sometimes food. It's always never the thing to go for, but it's something that I keep revolving around, and that is the summoner. And this is usually, it's not something you can really commit to, because it's done so terribly in so many RPGs. The idea of a character based around summoning some dragon or giant glowing tiger or combat robot into the arena, it's almost always done in this horrible way. And if it's not awful, it's usually broken, because you're suddenly have two characters worth of stuff happening, and you just kind of steamroller over the action economy. But there's just something to it. There's something about having your pet, or being able to click your fingers and make a dragon appear. There's just something to that. There's something primal inside me that makes me think, yeah, I want to be the one, pulls out my little red and white ball and choose some great champion to come onto the battlefield. So that's my bet, I think. A summoner. And for my behead, this is, I think I'm going to have to deviate from a specific class and go more towards an archetype here, although it fits into a couple of specific classes very well. And that is the concept of the face. The character whose job it is to be up front, give that positive charisma modifier, add to all the reaction rolls, ace all those diplomacy checks, and just steal everyone's screen time. Yes, whether it's a bard, a rogue, a bio-augmented clone spewing pheromones, whatever it is. I just don't like the idea of an archetype built specifically about being the one who talks. The one who everyone just kind of has to defer to, even if they have their own opinions in the plot, because they've got the plus 27 diplomacy or whatever. That archetype just rubs me the wrong way, and I feel like giving too much weight to someone who specializes in doing the talking is going to attract the wrong kinds of players, the ones who need the attention, and if they have get attention skill, they're going to take that skill. So my behead will be the face.
All right. Although I got to push back here and say, isn't it true that kind of player is almost never going to take that kind of archetype, because they'll just get attention from the GM. They'll wow them or seduce them without ever relying on dice or statistics. Or stat. What are those for?
Why would I get invested in a charisma bonus when I've got one already?
I don't know. I found that the people who like to inject themselves into those conversations gravitate towards that sort of bard / paladin slash diplomat sort of charisma.
With your
friendly.
facts and your lived
Yeah,
experience.
no, they're almost never going to play straight up combat monsters. I think they'll probably often be sort of buffers or kind of support characters, but they inject themselves as the face. But I think they do it as a part of their game's play style rather than the thing they choose. Are there many face classes really?
Bard.
Apart from
Bard.
okay, yeah.
Rogue,
You know what? Actually, yeah, you're absolutely right.
Paladin, as
The
you
hell
say.
with those guys.
Bards. Come back to it.
Toreadors.
That's
Yeah.
bards.
Nalks.
I'm straddling a line here. Okay, and straddling that line, I find myself straddling the center of the episode. So it's my
Optimise
go.
yourself there.
There's a segue. There's the only segue I'll ever straddle. Those things are death traps. The guy who bought that company, not the guy who invented the Segway, died on one when it ploughed into a river. I think that's a true story. Anyways, let me tell you another true story. Clearly, Segways being the work of your personal downfall, it would be much better to simply walk everywhere. Which is why my wed is the classic, the fated, the celebrated in story, rhyme, and occasionally RPG, the Ranger. I absolutely love Rangers. I love the cloak, and I love the little beard. Yeah, that's the two defining characteristics of a Ranger. I'm a country boy at heart.
You're getting a cloak for Christmas. You've already got the beard.
No, God. I don't. No cloaks. I'll take a sort of a camouflage snuggie at best. I love the Ranger. I love the mystique of the class. I love the fact that they show up like archetypally. Obviously, we've got Aragorn, we've got the Ranger from D&D. We've got a couple of others, but I like that. I like the countryside aspect of the Ranger, where you have a lot of wizards in their towers and barbarians in their plains. The Ranger is the most deciduous of D&D classes. He occupies a world I recognize, one of forests and hills and lakes and rivers and marshlands, the places between civilization. I'm from Roscommon, so that's fairly
I was wondering when you were going to get to that.
Is it between or beyond? So anyway, carry on.
I spent a lot of my formative years ranging the land, crossing boundaries, navigating streams and hills and walls and things. So I've got a real soft spot for them.
And when your parents got over their disappointment that you kept on finding your way back, you took up RPGs.
So many adventures started on a roadside I'd never seen before. So, but that's the one I'll return to again and again. However, my bed, and I believe I shared this in common with one of our other participants tonight, is the Paladin. And often we give a lot of stick to the single issue voter Paladin here on the Adventuring Party, but Paladins are kind of cool, and they've always been kind of cool because they are righteous, because they have a clear idea of the way the world should be. There's no grey areas for a Paladin. It is just my way or the highway, and the highway passes by the graveyard, and guess what? You're going to the graveyard. I love the absolute straightforwardness of being a Paladin. I love the power fantasy. Like, Paladins, as written in D&D and a lot of other places, they've got the actual word of God on their side. And not only the word, but it's written down the side of their sword, and by Jiminy, you're getting it. They're great fun. They have more, probably the word, the feature of Paladin that is almost never written into the description, but is there in the heart of anyone who ever picks them up, is bombast. Paladins are the Brian Blessed character class. They are always the loudest guy in the conversation, and they absolutely know what way the whole thing should go.
Which is why you put them as a sometimes food rather than your all times.
Exactly, yeah. I couldn't, in fairness, I don't think I could do that every day. It'd be too much. But they're great fun. I love paladins to bits. I mean, they can be problematic for other parties depending on how they're played. Can't stress that enough. But I do quite like them. So I'm going to tick over very quickly into my behead, which is in every way the opposite of the paladin. And it is the benighted, the befuddled, and other B words, beheaded, the artificer. And this is kind of specifically D&D had the artificer. We saw it in Eberron, where it originates, I suppose. Originates, question mark? But you do get tinkerers in a lot of places. And they tend to have these kind of glasses that have 17 different lenses that flip down. And they'll have little gewgaws and things like that. I think they're mechanically fussy. I think they are almost always played by greying English character actors. I don't think they're particularly heroic or... I understand why they should be a part of a fantasy world or a fantasy game, or even if we expand that out, the artificer who supplies the hero, whatever the genre setting, with his tools and tricks, the Q, if you will. Mm-hmm. But Q shows up at the start of the movie to crack some jokes and give 007 his equipment. There is no Q movie.
Oh, give them time. They're running out of ideas quickly enough.
And there was me thinking you were a big MacGyver fan. He's going to be so disappointed.
MacGyver improvises. He's more of a sorcerer, if anything. if we want to be, if we want to really peel back the layers.
No. He uses engineering. He builds things.
Oh, sure he does. Yeah.
I feel like this is one I'm going to
pulls out of his ass.
Argue, but I see where you're coming from. I almost, instead of the face, I went with Mr. Must Make a Plan. The not Murdoch, the one who was
Hannibal?
in charge of the A-Team.
Hannibal,
yes.
I love it when a plan comes together.
Yeah, the guy who is going to, at the start of the session, is going to tell everyone what they're going to be doing for their next 3 sessions, and then sets them off like bowling balls to mess up the preparations for his amazing scheme.
Yeah, F that guy.
And in that sense, I can see why someone like the Artificer can throw a GM off a game, but there is also the MacGyver Artificer, the guy who's splicing wires together and, in between 6-second rounds is putting together bazookas made out of rocks and diamond dust.
Iron Kingdoms had it as the bodger, right? The guy who just
think so,
threw things together on the fly.
Yeah.
But that's not an artificer. The artificer's like, oh, I gotta go away and do crafting, and I gotta work on my automaton and all this kind of... No, just stay in your workshop. We'll come back from the dungeon and sell you stuff. And then get some, whatever your next crazy invention is.
I don't think we're gonna save them this one.
I have to cede the floor now as we move over to Conrad.
Okay, so my wed is the human fighter, which is, and I base this purely on the fact that I am much more a GM than I am a player, but whenever I play, I seem to end up playing a human fighter, and what I find sort of baffling about people's attitude to them is they go, oh, well, they're so basic and there's not much to do with them. And I've just been running through in my head the various human fighter characters in various games that I've played, and they've all been different. And I think the simplicity is in some ways its own gift, because it means that you're relying on role-playing to generate your sort of distinctive... the distinctive thing about the character. And I find when I'm playing an RPG, I find that interesting now. I quite like tactical combat myself, so being good at fighting as a character is something that I enjoy. But I just think that there's a tremendous breadth of stuff. I mean, it covers everything from Robin Hood to Sir Lancelot to to Sam Spade to the to Yosaki Yojimbo to like it's all in there. Man with sword, have gun will travel. There you go.
Yeah.
That's all you need.
I do find that I have a fondness for the archetype of the professional, the one who gets by because he's just really good at his job and he doesn't have any special tricks. He just pushes himself that little bit further and brings himself a quality just through extra professionalism and skill. So yeah, I do have a fondness for fighters and other quote unquote generic characters who just sort of excel through tenacity. Whether a game is mechanically going to support that is another matter, but I do think the archetype does have some weight to it.
It speaks for itself. I mean, they are the majority of heroes that we rely, heroes in popular fiction and mythology and such. Human fighter, pretty much it. And my wed is...
You mean your bed? That was your wed.
Bed is the paladin. Because I weirdly have never played one, which I find, which in retrospect seems very strange to me. But I suppose I don't interpret them the way that Savage does, because from having read the religious man myself, having read the autobiographies or like reading Saint Augustine's Confessions, that is a guy who has thought deeply about and wrestled with moral problems. So the idea that the paladin is this sort of two-color Manichaean cruise missile with a cross on the front is I just think it's a bit silly, because I mean, look at the former Archbishop of Canterbury, Bishop Runcie. He picked up a military cross, was one of the first men into Bergen-Belsen, and is probably unique amongst archbishops of Canterbury in having killed multiple people. But
my kind of guy.
He's written quite movingly about that, and that was not an easy or a trivial thing. And I've a great fondness for the heroes like the Chanson de Roland and the Arthurian myths, where these are all paladins. They're human knightly fighters with a strong moral core, and their decisions are neither easy nor trivial. And I think that there's a huge amount to be explored there, and I haven't had the chance to do it yet, but I would like to do that at some point. As for my behead, probably it's a toss-up between the wizard and the tortured loner. In fact, I'll go with the tortured loner, because I just find it such a dull archetype in a role-playing game. It's like, who are you? Well, I'm an orphan. Where'd you come from? Don't know. What sort of family do you have? I don't have any family. Do you have any friends? I have, and I understand that for some people there is an enjoyment to be had in sort of, well, I have a character who has no commitments, who doesn't come from anywhere. There's no levers that the GM can use against you or can use to draw you into things. You're just this sort of cipher character. And it just annoys me. It just seems so dull and ridiculous, because, sort of one of the interesting things I find about, about people is, where do you come from? Who's your family? Like, what can you bring, and who are the people that you know that can either be used to bring you into the game or into the adventure, or that can be used as springboards for further play. And I just find it dull, to be honest.
Yeah, the Parents Dead likes adventuring archetype it needs, generally, if that's all you can muster, you probably need to work. Although, if you have a strong, like, moral compass in your head, you can maybe substitute in a certain type of game, but some people don't do that even that much.
So I think, Conrad, we had the same bed option, but we may be diametrically opposed.
I think we're
as to why.
In fact, there's an essay by C.S. Lewis called "The Necessity of Chivalry," which he wrote after just after the Battle of Britain, where he talked about the sort of the dichotomy between the ideal of the knight, where who is a man who is a man of blood and killing. But also in in private and civilian life is softly spoken, is courteous to women, protects the weak, and that holds within himself that tension. That is, and I think that's really interesting. And it's one of my favorite Lewis essays. But anyway, carry on.
Okay, well, that takes us to our last contributor this evening, but by no means our least, Mr. E, the master of our server.
No problem. I'll just follow up Kinch with his philosophizing and his quoting of the great literatures and discussing the archbishops and stuff. That's no problem. I can.
It's good. Just go with some. Look, throw in some wrestling references, maybe some references to some World of Warcraft. do what you got to do, man. It's your segment.
Yeah.
All right. So what's your?
I'm gonna start out with my wed, and thinking of this in terms of, there's only one class you can play for forever. That's it. You're done. You make a choice.
Desert Island wed.
I'm going to go with Cleric, and I'm going to go with it for a couple of different reasons. First of all, from the mechanics perspective, clerics, particularly as they're written now and as they've been presented since the introduction of gods having domains, are tremendously versatile. You can now build, like, if you're playing D&D 5th Ed or Pathfinder 2 or whichever of the most recent, iterations of the cleric-esque games, they can do all sorts of things. You've got your battle clerics, you've got your artificer clerics to annoy Savage with, you've got, your clerics of the sun and clerics of nature, and they can damn near do anything. They can be really good at fighting melee, they can cast powerful spells, they can wear heavy armor. They're super versatile, super useful characters, and anytime you roll up to a game and go to a table and say, "Hey guys, I'm willing to play a cleric, can I play?" they're going to say yes. It's like, who turns down having a cleric in their party? They're going to assume you'll heal them. You might. From the other side of it, I think clerics are great for particularly those fantasy settings that they show up in, because they come with a whole bunch of hooks to the setting, because they're servants of a particular god. And if, even if you're a little bit fuzzy on the setting, if you're new to it or whatever, you can read up the section on your god of choice, read up what that god favors, what he's like, and you've just got this automatic integration into the setting, because now you know what your priestly duties are like, and you can just kind of build up your sort of table of responses from there and throw in your own personal spin on it and build up a character that's integrated with the world relatively quickly and easily. So that's the kind of combo reasons, mechanically and story-wise, for going with Cleric for my wed. Moving on to bed. Many years ago, I played D&D. I think it was original 3rd Ed, not even 3.5. And I played a multi-classed sorcerer rogue. And I had tremendous fun with that character. Loved the character, loved the campaign. Mechanically, it was absolute garbage. So, because I don't know if you tried to multi-class sorcerer back in the day, but it just did not work very well. So my bed choice is the Arcane Trickster, which is a modern iteration of a single class version of what I tried to build back in the day. And it's a wonderfully versatile sort of it's the rogue, but with spells, and it lets you do cool, funky, trickstery stuff with magic. It lets you be pretty good at sneaking up behind somebody and knifing them in the back, and then turning invisible so that you can get away. It's a wonderful combination of sort of ability in terms of skills and combat prowess, and a very clever bag of tricks, and it allows you to combo things which are naturally coming from, say, 2 different classes, balling them into one unit and going to town with it, doing all sorts of shenanigans.
It sounds like it got its best outing in the Dishonored game, at the sort of the magic using thief or assassin.
Yeah,
that
there's
we saw in Dishonored.
You can also go back to the Grey Mouser of yore.
I mean, the same kind of thing would show up all over the place. Like even in the
it's been a long time.
You could probably build your Jedi, or probably not a Jedi because you're knifing people in the back a lot. But you can use your force powers in combination with your roguish powers. It's that melding of those 2 particular things.
Yeah.
It's doing the classic rogue stuff but with that hint of magic to it. Really appeals to me in the Arcane Trickster. My behead.
Yes, who gets shanked? Who gets shanked in the dark then?
I'm going to jump genre wildly and leap over to Shadowrun and behead the Decker.
No! Oh, okay. No, go, carry on.
And I'm going to take the Decker and any other cyberpunk-esque game that has, a class or playstyle devoted to hacking computers.
Keyboard jockey.
Just get the hell out. Because the only way that works is by we're going to take 15% of our entire print area of this book and devote it to a rules system that only one player will ever use. And any time that player decides, well, I'm going to use my class's mechanics, every other player at the table is just like, all right, we'll go. This is why we invented Magic the Gathering. We're going to go and play a couple of games of Magic while you spend the next hour hacking that thing for us. It's such an anti-group mechanic. Unless everybody's doing it and can do it in conjunction with one another, but that's
Just
never
go play
the case.
Digimon.
It's
That's never the case.
Legendarily terrible. And also, they one of the resolution methods in Cyberpunk 2020 was to go play a game of WotC's Netrunner to resolve the infiltration.
A great game, but not something I want to take a 45-minute break from my RPG
It makes it a bit more explicit, though. Sorry, we're going to the GM and me are going to play a different game. You guys can watch.
I don't mind, a game having some sort of mechanic for hacking, but having a class devoted to it, because if somebody has invested in their character, if a player has put in the effort, built up their character, created their backstory, done all the things they're supposed to be doing, you want to be able to give them their time in the spotlight. But there is no way with the Decker to give that player his rightly deserved time in the spotlight without it being the most complete spotlight there ever has been. He doesn't get a spotlight. He gets his own stage. He's doing a one-man show in the little theater 5 doors down from the actual theater that the main show is on. It's just mechanically a disaster to run at a table.
And at the end of all that, a door opens.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you spend an hour battling sprites in a 3D digital wonderland while everybody else gets bored off their arse, and at the end of it, a red light turns green and a lock clicks. Wonderful. Well done. That was thrilling. Ugh.
Wow, this might be the strongest beheading I think I've witnessed across
and entirely justified. I've GM'd it. It's painfully dull.
Damn.
Get yourself an NPC Netrunner and get the hell on with it.
Okay. Well, I think we've all aired our linen. We've gotten certain things out of our system, found a couple of common touch points, discovered that sometimes you're going to come at the same conquest from entirely different angles. I I'm certainly delighted to sort of share this with you guys this evening. I hope you've all had fun. Folks, we are the Adventuring Party. We are a ragtag group of diverse individuals with some peculiar tastes that we don't mind sharing with you. If you want to share your tastes with us, you can find us on our Discord, where we carry on the party after hours. You can follow us up on Facebook and Twitter, where you will often see robotic notifications of where amazing things are happening, usually here in the podcast or in Discord. If you have a more nuanced treatsy or manifesto or simply list of demands to send us, you can hit us up at party at adventuringparty.net. That's an email address. Some of our older listeners might remember those. Otherwise, I'm sure you know how to find us if you're listening to this. And if you're not listening to this, then
just at
be.
SpeakPipe.
Oh yeah, you can talk to us on SpeakPipe. You can come and shout us on SpeakPipe. We should do another mailbag episode real soon.
Defend
Put a flag
the
in
face,
that.
I dare you.
So, on those strongly held beliefs, we'll draw the curtain this evening. I've been Savage. I've been joined this evening by Conrad Kinch. Conrad, you got a podcast. What is it?
It's called 3 and 4pence. It's about things, mainly books and games and law and history occasionally.
So just one particular thing. Mr. E, you've been a very good guest. You also are running our Discord server. You are basically God there, for which we are eternally thankful.
Come and join us in Discord. Come and chat with us. Drop into the server, yell a little bit, and shortly thereafter we'll open things up and you'll be able to see all the different conversation places.
Yeah, and it's fair to say that without Mr. E, this current sort of session recording simply wouldn't be possible. We've been using Discord to coordinate during the current crisis, and Mr. E was instrumental in getting us off the ground there. Eoin, anything you want to push? I know you're a man of letters, a man of strong opinions, a man of passions.
Jesus, I'm around, lads. You know, if you need some info or something, or you want to go, oh, what the hell are you talking about? I'm on the Discord, or you'll catch me on the email.
He is our John Madden / Michal Namirahurthy of gaming. Scarr, anything you wanna push before we leave?
I used to have blogs in the before time. But you probably don't want to look those up. But yeah, come to our Discord, play the Pass the Buck quiz game, something we invented in Trinity in 2004, and we really should have stopped at that point, but we didn't.
we never learned. We touched on Paladins and Clerics. They got a good innings tonight. And for my money, one of the best representations of this kind of character comes through the Cold Fire trilogy by a lady called Celia S. Friedman, who wrote them back in the early 90s. And they are 3 amazing books that I think everybody... They actually have a tortured loner as well, which is surprisingly well-rounded character. As the series progresses, but 3 fantastic. But the standout is Damien Vrice, a hard-smoking, womanizing, stake-chewing paladin / cleric, adrift in a world of magic and madness. And I'd encourage any of you who love fantasy and sci-fi to check out the Cold Fire trilogy. It's like 20... the 90s. When was the 90s, guys? It's 30 years ago.
91, 93, and 95. I was just looking it up here.
That's right, yeah. So it's at its earliest, at its latest, it was 25 years ago. And definitely you can pull a lot. If you're a Paladin or Cleric player, you can definitely pull a lot from those. Anyways, that's my recommendation for this week. Apart from obviously going back and listening to all of our previous episodes. Check out episode 600, which was not so long ago. Check out our bracket fight episodes, which have been happening and continue to happen probably until we're all dead in the ground. Okay, folks. This has been the Adventuring Party. I'm Savage. This party's over.
Thanks for listening to The Adventuring Party. You can find show notes and links to things we've mentioned at www.theadventuringparty.net and on our Facebook page. You can leave comments there or talk to our Twitter account at adventuringpty. Or you can record a voice message at www.speakpipe.com/theadventuringparty. The hosts can be contacted directly by mail at Eoin, Savage or Scarr at theadventuringparty.net. If you'd like to be part of the party all the time, come join our Discord server. Link in the show notes. The Adventuring Party is released under a Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial Share Alike version 3 license.